While it isn't something that I've discussed on the channel previously, I have been tentatively excited for the new Yu-Gi-Oh! Card Game Chronicles lore anime. It's something different for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because every anime that has existed for the franchise has been in some way about characters playing the card game, not about the actual lore that a lot of the themes and archetypes in the actual card game itself have. A group of cards that all share the same name, and even ones that don't and just share lore in their artwork. There's a lot over Yu-Gi-Oh's massive time span. It's celebrating the 25th anniversary of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime this year, and the card game has been going on in Japan since 1999. So there's a lot to explore just looking at the cards themselves. So the idea of this, of an anime that every so often focuses on a different archetype of cards and goes through their lore, is really intriguing and really different for Yu-Gi-Oh! And over the past year, it has been something that's generated a lot of discussion ever since we got that initial 6-ish minute preview showing a bunch of short clips of different archetypes. It looked really interesting. And this new Konami handled studio seemingly was going to be able to give us really strong animation based on that trailer. So over the last year, people have been speculating wildly over what exactly we would get, when we would get it, and how much we would get. And a few months ago, we learned it was going to be a series of shorts released monthly on YouTube, which I'm sure to some people was disappointing because I think many people wanted it to be a weekly anime, wanted it to be full-length episodes, not shorts. But by and large, people seem to have accepted that, especially when we learned it wasn't just going to be one episode per story. We could get multiple episodes dedicated to exploring a certain set of characters, a certain set of cards, which meant, okay, even if it is going to be short episodes, at least we can get multiple ones to fully flesh out their backstory, especially because not everybody is going to be super knowledgeable about these cards. You know, if you're not a competitive player, you might not know what they are. If you're only somebody who maybe casually watched the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime when they were a kid, you might not know the lore of Sky Striker or Six Samurai. When we learned we were getting multiple episodes per story, I think it alleviated some fears, despite the fact that they were going to be shorts, that hopefully this would be something that would be accessible to people who were not super familiar with competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And something that you could show to people to say, hey, here's this really cool new Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, it's not very long, and hopefully it'd be something they could get into. Well, the first episode just came out this past Sunday, and it certainly was short, all right. In fact, it was 4 minutes long, but that is counting credits. If you take out credits, it's really 3.5 minutes. A lot shorter than I think basically anybody was anticipating, including myself. I thought we would get like 7, 8, maybe if we were lucky, even 10 minutes. Certainly not anything more than like half-length episodes, but man, I thought we would get more than 3.5 minutes. I think basically everybody did. In fact, there were still people I saw reacting to this who somehow still thought we were going to get full-length episodes. Like there were people thinking we were getting 23-minute episodes. And on the one hand, I feel bad for those people because obviously if you're expecting full-length and you get 3.5 minutes, you are going to be incredibly disappointed. But on the other hand, we have known for months that these were going to be shorts. And while we didn't know the length, you should have known it was not going to be a full-length episode. 3.5 minutes really is not a lot of time to tell a super detailed, compelling story. But we have known that the Sky Striker lore, which is covered in this episode, would be also covered in the May episode. So, hey, at least we're getting 2 episodes of this, right? It's not long, but, 7 minutes could tell us something halfway decent, right? Well, this episode really does not do a good job of telling you anything about Sky Strikers. It just kind of throws you into a battle between Ray and Rose and doesn't really explain anything about what's going on. If you don't know anything about Sky Strikers, if you've never heard of them before, you don't know who Ray and Rose are, you don't have any idea about this archetype, which if you've played Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, because this is one of the most popular archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's one that was very heavily competitive for a very long time. But if you're someone who doesn't know anything about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, this is going to mean nothing to you. And this first episode certainly isn't going to make you start caring about Sky Strikers because it doesn't give you a reason to care about Sky Strikers. It doesn't tell you anything about these characters' backstories, who they are, why they're fighting. Nobody is going to be able to discern anything about what is going on based on these 3.5 minutes. And I don't think an additional 3.5 minutes is really going to fix that. So the primary thing that I know a lot of others were hoping would come out of this, which is a experience that you can show people to maybe get them interested in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game lore, really isn't going to to be achievable based on what we've seen in this first episode. And unless we get stories that run for multiple months, multiple episodes, and are structured better than this, that don't just throw you right into the action, but actually start at the beginning of these character stories, I don't really see how this is going to be anything more than fan service for people who already know these archetypes beforehand, who are basically people who have played Yu-Gi-Oh! And are knowledgeable about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Relatively modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Not people who played GOAT format back in 2005 or Perfect Circle in 2007. We're talking people who have played Yu-Gi-Oh! In the modern era. I mean, Sky Striker is an archetype from 2018 that has been relevant in some way, shape, or form ever since, even if it hasn't always been a tier 1 competitive deck. But if you stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Even in like 2015, you're not going to know who these characters are, and you're not going to be given a reason to care about them by this short episode. So in terms of its structure, it really does not work. And I think honestly, that's the bigger issue compared to the length. Because if this had started with the very beginning of their story and only run for 3.5 minutes, I think it would have been fine because we would have had subsequent episodes. I mean, in this case, at least one more to focus on it further, to build on it, to hopefully eventually get to a satisfying conclusion. But just throwing you into the action like this really doesn't help anybody. It literally just turns it into fan service. And it is very effective fan service. There are a lot of moments that people who are familiar with Sky Striker are going to say, oh, hey, I know what that is. I know what that's referencing. And that's fun for people who know about Sky Strikers. But otherwise, you're going to get nothing out of this. Now, that's not to say there isn't anything positive about this short, because there is, and that's the animation. The animation quality is very strong, as you would expect from something that's only 3.5 minutes, but nevertheless, it does look very good. It shows that this new Konami studio is capable of providing strong animation like what we saw in the trailer. And I suppose strong animation and fight scenes, even if the substance isn't really there, isn't the worst way to spend 3.5 minutes of your time once a month. So in short, I do understand why so many people are disappointed with this. Part of it is certainly just people not understanding what this was going to be. Part of it is the fact that we do not have any more weekly Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. The most recent series, Go Rush, ended, and there is no replacement. And given that this seemingly is going to be the replacement, and it's only going to be 3.5 minutes once per month rather than a full-length episode once per week, is going to be very disappointing to people, especially those who were big fans of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. I mean, it ran for 25 years nonstop. People who followed it for even just a few shows are going to be disappointed to have something like that, this constant presence, lost. And on top of that, this does not work as a way to introduce people to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game lore. Now, maybe that will change in subsequent episodes. Maybe the Albaz story will be better and will start at a better point. Maybe we will get stories that run for more than just 1 or 2 episodes. Maybe we'll have ones that run for, 5 or 6 months, and that'll give them enough time to flesh out a story. But man, 3.5 minutes is not enough to tell a compelling story. And especially if it's structured in the same way as the Sky Striker episode, because at the end of the day, if this is what we keep getting once per month, it really is just going to be really well animated fan service. And again, that's fine, but this could be so much better. It will probably continue to be a disappointment for people going forward unless you keep your expectations in check. And sure, that'll happen now that we know what to expect from this. And hey, maybe they'll eventually increase the runtime for certain episodes. We don't know that all of them are going to be 3.5 minutes long going forward. Maybe we'll get some that are a little bit longer, but certainly I would not be expecting anything that's like 10 minutes long or anything. Maybe we'll get ones that are like 5 minutes long at one point, but that's just speculation. There is nothing to say that. And certainly the assumption you should have going forward is that they'll probably all be around 3.5 minutes long. So I am disappointed because this should have been better. There should have been more to this. And this really is failing to achieve the main thing that I wanted it to achieve, which was be a good introduction for Yu-Gi-Oh! Lore. But as just pure fan service once per month, it isn't bad. Like, it is working in that respect. It's just not doing more than that. Nevertheless, if you watched this episode, what did you think of it? If you haven't seen this episode, despite my criticisms of it, I would say you might as well give it a watch because it's only 3.5 minutes. See if you like it, see if you like the animation, see if you get more out of the story than I'm expecting people to get out of it. At the end of the day, all I can do is hope that this gets better as time goes on. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode, what you're expecting for it in the future, and if this matched your expectations for it or not. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and until next time, take care, everyone. Look forward to the next video.